Welcome back once again to Jack's Tech Corner. I'm your host Jack, and this is yet another video tutorial of Windows Server 2008 R2. Again, this video tutorial will work with Windows Server 2000, 2003, and obviously R2, or 2008. We just looked at the importance of DNS and why you need a solid DNS server and a solid DNS scheme for your network to make logons very quick and rapid. Now we're going to talk about the importance of DHCP and how DHCP, well, actually, unless you are a big fan of going out and setting up static addresses for everybody's computer in your network, which takes a lot of work because then you have to physically touch every single computer. In our network, people bring computers in maybe from home, like a laptop coming into your network. You'd have to go out and assign that person an IP address. What's going to happen when they go home, they connect into their internet, you're going to receive a phone call about 10 o'clock at night saying, hey, I can't get internet. I don't know why. It's because you hard-coded your corporate IP address scheme into their home network, which who knows what that might be. You may get lucky and have the same scheme, but I kind of doubt it. So I'm going to show you how to set up DHCP server, and at the same time, we're going to look at how you would reserve an IP address for any device. Every device on your network has what's called a MAC address, and I'll show you that if you're not familiar with that. And we're going to talk about how you would reserve the address on that particular laptop. So when that laptop presents itself to your network, it gives it a IP address based on what you want it to have. And when it leaves your network, that IP releases itself basically off that machine, and then the people can use it at home. So I do not right now currently have DHCP server on here. I'm hoping this does not actually throw my home network off here. It's going to probably for a few minutes, and I'm going to have to disable the DHCP server. But for the benefit of the educational part of this and you learning Windows Server, I think it's critical that you see this. We're going to go to Administrative Tools if you don't have it configured yet, and we're going to go to Server Manager. Once you're in Server Manager, it allows you to assign roles. You see we have a domain controller running and a DNS server currently running. So we're going to add a role, and this time we're going to just jump through here and add DHCP server. Click Next. Introduction to DHCP if you want to read about that, or just take my word for it with the video that you're going to learn what you need to know. Click Next. This is the IP address of our DHCP server. Okay, so the DHCP server, basically all it is, it's a service on your server that's handing out IP addresses. I think we kind of went through that enough in the intro so you understand that. Let's click Next. Next is going to tell you your parent domain controller, which is our basic domain controller. We have one currently that we're working with. You can have multiples. You can have we used to call them backup domain controllers. Now we call them branches and leaves and trees and all kind of crap in a forest. But to me, old schooled, and I'm sorry about that, but I always have a primary domain controller, and I always run a backup domain controller on my network to help with the logins, to kind of balance my network. And it also allows, if the primary domain controller would drop out, it will find a backup domain controller and accept those logins, so you can still get your people on the network when you're fixing that primary domain controller. Preferred DNS server, I told you before in the last video, the 127.0.0.1, that is a loopback. It's a loopback DNS server. You can validate it, but it's just going to see itself, and it's going to be fine. The alternate DNS server, this is where I use OpenDNS. If you haven't looked at it yet, it's 208.67.222.222 or 220.220. Then you click Next. Okay, WINS. We talked about WINS, or Windows Naming Convention Service, where we're not going to worry about that. Click Next. It looks like I'm starting to experience a storm here. If you hear some thunder, I'm going to be bumping out of here pretty quick to shut these computers down. But DHCP server cannot do anything until you assign it a scope. A scope is just that. A scope is a group of addresses that you want to use or hand out. If you have a home router, like a home wireless router, if you look at that, and if it's doing your DHCP, which mine is, there's a scope of addresses that assigned to each device. When you run out of addresses, folks, no more devices will work on your network. So first thing I tell you everybody to do when they're creating a DHCP scope is look at your network, count the total devices on there right now, and give it. I would say every year, depending on where you work, where we work is in a school, so every year you want at least double that. If not, so if I have 20 this year, which would be that would be amazing for us. But if we had 20, I would say next year we'll have 40, and the year after that we'd have 80. The year after that we'd have 160. So you just want to double that number up. Make sure your scope is large enough. In our network, when I first took over it at the school, I thought, well, why do we have a Class A network? If you want to know about subnetting and more, I'm not going to get into that here in this video. I do Google searches to do my subnetting. Believe it or not, works really well. Most people get away with a Class C network. Class C network is basically 253 addresses. I always say there's one for broadcast, like 254 or 255 for broadcast. So you get 253 or 254 addresses total, but plan 253. That's a safe margin. Leave those two other ones for broadcast. So you would add the scope here. You would give it a name. Let's just say primary. That's our primary scope. Our starting address, let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's 10.16.1.2. And you would do that normally when you set up servers in your network. Your server itself, go back here to even this, your server itself would be your routers .1, 10.16.1.1 would be a router, or 192.168.1.1 for your house, right? That's your router. Your server should start at .2. I like to keep my servers low. And again, when I set this up, I try to think ahead. How many servers will I need to run over the next few years? Because you don't want to redo a DHCP server, folks. It's really a pain in the backside to redo it. I've done it twice because I didn't anticipate the growth of our servers that I should. So now what I do, I make this one .100. That way, that gives me 99 addresses below that. Well, actually 98 because .1 is really gone, right? So 98 addresses below that I can use for different servers or services. Maybe I want to run a web service or something of that nature. And I know where that scope is open. So I don't want those addresses ever to be handed out. So I start my scope at 100. We're going to end it at 10.16.1.253 is where we're going to end it. That way I know that's a Class C network. My subnet mask then would be 255.255.255.0. And my default gateway is very optional at this point, so we're just not going to put that in right now. All right. Subnet type. Look here, it says wired. Lease duration will be 8 days. You can change this. Lease duration will be 8 hours. Basically, how long do you want the address to be hanging on a particular machine? If you have enough addresses, 8 days is fine. After 8 days, when that machine no longer is turned on or activated, somebody's on vacation, that address goes back into the pool, and then it could be handed back out, which isn't going to hurt anything. When the people come in and turn that computer on, it will just get a different address. Not a big deal. Click OK. That's primary. Again, if looking at this, we have these addresses, and say at one point or another we run out. We say, wow, we really didn't anticipate that growth of our company. Thank goodness, so you're making a lot of money, right? You got a big raise as a technologist. You're rolling in the dough now, but now you have more devices you got to take care of. That's a good thing. All we do is we would click Add, and we would add another scope or another range of IPs to have more to hand out for the DHCP server. Let's click Next. Okay, it says Enable DHCP v6 stateless mode for this server. So clients can be configured without using a DHCP server, or disable stateless. It doesn't really matter unless you're using v6, which I don't know of a whole lot of people that are. Preferred DNS Server IP6 address. Let's go back. We're going to just disable this because we're really not using it, so we're not going to worry about that. Use current credentials, the administrator credential. That's fine. That's what we want to do. Click Next. At that point now, all we have to do is click Install, and we're going to go ahead and install this. It may actually ask you for your disk. I'm actually loading this from a ISO image. This is a virtual machine I'm working with here. So, okay, installation succeeded. Close it. And close this out now. Now if we go to start, we didn't reboot, right? Administrative tools. Now you see we have DHCP right here. This is our DHCP server. This is what it looks like. Again, it's a service running on a server. Very important to tell you how that works there. IP4. And now we can see right here that we do actually have the scope, our address pool. This is the address pool we created. Blow this up a little bit more here so you can see this. 100 to 253. That's this first scope. Again, you could always right click in here. You can do a new exclusion range. And since we're here, we're going to talk about that. Exclusion range is, let's say for instance, if you have more than 98 devices. And you say, wow, we need to exclude a couple more addresses. There's a couple ways we can do this. We can start at an IP address and end at an IP address. So let's say, for instance, if I want to exclude 10.16.1.105, I can exclude one address, right? I can end it at 10.16.1.105. And I'm going to add that. Now, I just excluded that. That address will never be handed out on my network. It's excluded. I can use that address now wherever I want to use that. Sometimes you would do that for printers. If you're having a hard time deciphering what a MAC address is for that printer, you would just exclude it and go with it there. Let's delete that exclusion. Address leases. There's no leases out right now, but this is where all your computer names and the addresses it's handing out. It'll tell you the lease expiration and the type of device as they enter your network. Next thing we're going to talk about is reservations. Now, when we reserve an IP address, all you need to do is you need the MAC address and you need the actual IP address that you're going to give that device. Now, if you're reserving IP addresses, make sure it's one that's in your address pool. Here's how we do that. In case you're not familiar, you can go into your computer, your workstation, wherever you're at. If you're in a printer, you can usually print the config sheet, and it's going to tell you a MAC address or a physical address. We're going to do ipconfig with a /all. And if we look at this, you're going to look for wherever the current IP address is. And we know it's this one right here. Here's our physical address right here. So you would ask the user for that physical address. Pull this to the left here a little bit. And we would right click on here and do a new reservation. The name, I usually name it to whatever the device is. This is server 1. And it has 10.16.1. It knows your scope. All you got to do is fill in the rest of it, 76. And give it a address, a physical address, 001C 42 7F 7F and 7F again. That's interesting. And then A2. And if we hit OK, you see it says both. It says DHCP or boot P or booting from the network. Just say both, just to make it simple on you. Okay, it says it's not relevant to a client, so it's not seeing it on the network because it's static to the server, but that's okay. So we cannot add the server in here, unfortunately. I don't think I can add any in here, actually. 105, I don't think that'll add. Yeah, it did. Okay, so it did add. So every time that this DHCP server sees this MAC address come on the network, the physical address come up on the network, it's going to hand it that IP address. That's very critical, especially if you're web filtering. Even more critical, though, to make sure that the devices coming into your building, whatever device that might be, folks, it could even be an iPad. We've reserved iPod Touches. All of our printers we reserve, so we know exactly the IP address for that device, and it never changes. You don't want to set up an IP printer for somebody, and it gets a power cycle and picks up a new IP. all of a sudden they can't print. This is where this comes in very handy. Again, I'm just going to delete that. I showed you how that worked. I'm going to go here and I'm going to actually go and I'm going to look at disabling the scope. So as soon as I see it here, we can unauthorize it. I really thought there was a way I could actually go in here and just shut this down. So if I unauthorize it, removing authorization for the server will directly cause the DHCP server to stop responding to client requests. Are you sure? Yes, I do want to do that. And the reason I want to deauthorize it, folks, is because I have a DHCP server running on my system. I don't want this one to interfere with anybody in the house right now trying to get on the network, to get on the wireless or something. So we just disabled it. And you can always reauthorize it. So, and there is something to tell you about that. If you're ever building a new DHCP server, you get it all set up, you're ready to turn it on. I recommend you do this on a weekend when there's nobody on your network, if your company is so inclined to do it that way. Get your new one set up and ready to go, and then go in. You would actually deauthorize your old one and then bring that new server, plug the network cable in, bring it up, and then it's ready to do the IP addressing for your network. Scope options, this gives you a little bit of the DNS history here. DNS servers. Let's see if we can bring that up. No, because the scope is actually turned off now. But you can actually change your DNS servers if it would ever change for any reason. You can also change your domain name if that would ever change for any reason. So I hope that helped you with DHCP server. And I hope you now understand the importance of having a good, solid DHCP server. Again, folks, don't put 2 or 3 of these things on your network with the same scope. You are going to have a nightmare. You're going to lose a lot of sleep wondering why you're having IP conflicts. And it's probably because you didn't deauthorize one when you brought up a new one. So until next time, remember, please subscribe to the videos. I appreciate it very much when you subscribe. If I'm helping you out, email me, let me know. A lot of you already have and said, Jack, I'm glad I'm learning Windows Server. My goodness, you may need some help there. It's always good to help each other out. If you have any ideas for any more Windows Server tutorials, I have a lot more in my head that I'm coming up with. Please email me at jackstechcorner@gmail.com. So until next time, enjoy, get your Windows servers up and running, and I'll see you back here very soon. Bye for now.